"We couldn't miss your sister's trip to Europe, honey, you understand, right?" That was the exact text message my mother sent me just 12 hours before I walked down the aisle entirely alone. My own parents deliberately skipped my wedding, leaving my bridal suite completely empty, just so they could fund and attend my spoiled younger sister's luxury summer vacation. They broke my heart without a single shred of remorse, completely prioritizing her vanity over my milestone. But months later, the tables turned in the most shocking way imaginable. When my sister's reckless lifestyle landed them in a desperate high-stakes crisis, they came crawling back to my doorstep, begging for my help. Instead of giving them a handout, I handed them a cold dose of absolute reality that they will never forget. If you want to see how a devastating family betrayal turned into the ultimate act of poetic justice, stay tuned until the very end, and don't forget to comment the city you're watching from so I can see exactly where my voice is traveling. Dear Clara, my name is Clara, and at 27 years old, I have built a life centered around creating beautiful, harmonious spaces as an interior designer. I spent years meticulously planning every single aspect of my own wedding day, pouring my heart and hard-earned savings into a celebration of love and new beginnings. But as I sat in the bridal suite on that bright Saturday morning, surrounded by the soft scent of fresh roses, a heavy, suffocating silence hung in the room. The space meant for my mother and father remained completely empty. Just 12 hours before I was set to walk down the aisle, my phone had buzzed with a casual, devastating text message from my mother. It read, "We couldn't miss your sister's trip to Europe, honey. You understand, right? We'll celebrate when we get back." My own parents had deliberately chosen to skip my wedding, entirely prioritizing my spoiled younger sister, Evelyn's sudden luxury summer vacation over my milestone. They didn't care about the empty seats in the front row or the agonizing heartbreak they left in their wake. Tears threatened to ruin my makeup, but as my fiancé took my hand, a wave of profound clarity washed over me. I wiped my face, stood tall, and walked down the aisle with a mixture of deep sorrow and an unyielding found resolve. I realized right then that blood doesn't make a family, loyalty does. And to fully understand how my parents could completely abandon me on the most important day of my life, you have to understand the toxic dynamic that defined our entire household. Growing up, my younger sister Evelyn was always treated as the ultimate, untouchable golden child. She was a master of manipulation, and my parents eagerly shielded her from any form of responsibility or real-world accountability. Whatever whim or luxury Evelyn demanded, my parents would gladly empty their wallets to provide it, even if it meant stripping away basic opportunities from me. While I worked multiple part-time jobs throughout college to pay for my own tuition and textbooks, Evelyn was handed a brand new car and an endless allowance without ever lifting a single finger. When I got engaged, I didn't ask my parents for a single dime. My fiancé and I saved every penny ourselves to fund our wedding, wanting them there simply to share in our joy. Yet, the moment Evelyn stamped her feet and declared she absolutely needed a spontaneous, high-end European vacation to cure her seasonal boredom, my parents didn't hesitate. They eagerly dropped thousands of dollars on plane tickets and luxury hotels, abandoning my wedding entirely to cater to her endless vanity. To them, my milestones were always an afterthought, while Evelyn's shallow desires were treated as absolute family emergencies. They truly believed I would just quietly accept being second best, completely blind to the fact that their enabling behavior was slowly setting them up for a massive disaster. Paldian. When my husband and I returned from our honeymoon, I made a quiet, unshakable vow to myself. The days of letting my parents treat my life as a secondary priority were officially over. I expected at least a sliver of remorse from them when they touched down from their overseas flight. But when I opened social media, I was met with a cold wall of absolute tone deafness. My mother's profile was completely flooded with dozens of glamorous photos from Paris and Rome, featuring caption after caption praising Evelyn's flawless vacation style. There was not a single public mention of my wedding, nor was there a private text message apologizing for their devastating absence. That glaring lack of accountability was the final straw for me. Instead of launching into an emotionally exhausting screaming match that would yield absolutely no results, I decided to build a firm, protective boundary around my peace. I went completely low contact with my parents and sister, quietly muting their numbers and blocking them from seeing any intimate details of my personal life. My husband and I poured all of our collective energy into building our future together, heavily focusing on scaling my interior design business to new heights. We surrounded ourselves with a brilliant, chosen family of close friends and mentors who actually respected, valued, and showed up for us. Months flew by, and for the first time in my 27 years, the constant, suffocating weight of family rejection completely vanished, replaced by an incredible sense of genuine fulfillment and security. I had successfully closed the door on their toxic behavior, entirely unaware that the golden child they prioritized was about to tear their own world completely apart. 3 months of peaceful silence flew by before the illusion of .pour for Pathersalzend. My family's glamorous life came crashing down in spectacular fashion. It began on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone suddenly lit up with dozens of frantic, consecutive phone calls and panicked text messages from my aunts and extended relatives. Intrigued and slightly concerned, I finally answered a call from my godmother, who laid out the shocking, unvarnished truth of what had been happening behind the scenes. The enabling monster my parents had spent decades creating had finally turned on them. Evelyn's reckless spending habits and insatiable need for luxury had completely spiraled out of control during a subsequent, entirely uninsured international trip to Bali. Wanting to impress her online followers, Evelyn had rented a high-end luxury villa and a fleet of expensive jet skis using my father's primary credit cards. An accident occurred on the water, resulting in severe property damage and a highly complicated legal dispute with the local authorities. Because my parents had raised Evelyn to believe she was entirely above the law, she had refused to cooperate, which rapidly escalated the situation into a full-blown, international, legal nightmare. To prevent their golden child from facing foreign prosecution, my parents had frantically liquidated their entire personal retirement accounts and taken out a high-interest emergency loan to pay off the massive damages and legal fees. In a matter of weeks, Evelyn's utter recklessness had completely drained their life savings, leaving my parents on the absolute brink of a devastating financial collapse that actively threatened to cost them their home and livelihood. Mondia, given the sheer scale of the financial disaster they had actively enabled, part of me expected a deeply humbled, apologetic phone call. Instead, I was met with the absolute height of toxic family entitlement. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening when a sudden, aggressive pounding echoed through my front door. When I opened it, my heart sank. Standing on my porch, soaked from the rain, were my exhausted-looking parents, with a sobbing, dramatic Evelyn clutching a designer handbag right behind them. They didn't even bother to greet me or ask how my new marriage was going. They simply pushed past me into my living room, instantly tracking mud onto my clean hardwood floors. My mother immediately began wringing her hands, her voice trembling with a forced, manipulative desperation. "Clara, thank goodness you're home," she cried, gesturing wildly toward my sister. "Your sister is in a terrible crisis, and our family is on the verge of losing absolutely everything. We need $90,000 immediately to clear the remaining high-interest loans, or the bank is going to foreclose on our house next month." I stood there in absolute shock as my father stepped forward, his expression turning stern and demanding, completely devoid of any real humility. "We know your interior design firm had a record-breaking quarter, Clara," he stated coldly, using an aggressive tone that made it clear he viewed my hard-earned business capital as his personal emergency fund. "You have the cash sitting in your corporate accounts. We are family, and it is your absolute moral obligation to bail us out of this nightmare. You cannot sit there in your beautiful house and watch your own parents lose everything just because of a mistake. They stood there watching me, confidently expecting me to cave to their emotional blackmail, completely blind to the storm they had just walked into. I didn't raise my voice, nor did I let out an angry scream. Instead, I calmly walked over to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a single, neatly printed piece of paper. I walked back over to the living room, stood directly in front of my parents, and looked them dead in the eye. Before we discuss a single cent of my hard-earned business capital, I said, my voice echoing with a cold, first, lethal clarity that made Evelyn's dramatic sobbing instantly freeze, I want to read something to you. I held up the paper and read aloud the exact text. Message my mother had sent me on my wedding morning. We couldn't miss your sister's trip to Europe, honey. You understand, right? We'll celebrate when we get back. My father shifted uncomfortably, and my mother looked down at the muddy floor, her face flushing crimson. You completely abandoned me on the most important day of my life to fund an entitled brat's luxury vacation. I delivered each word like a crushing blow. You stood by and cheered while she spent money you didn't have, all while treating my life, my marriage, and my milestones like absolute trash. Now, after your enabling behavior has predictably blew up your entire lives, you have the absolute audacity to march into my home and demand I bankrupt my own business to clean up her mess? Evelyn opened her mouth to whine, but I instantly cut her off with a sharp glare. Not a chance. You reaped the rewards of your favoritism, and now you will reap the consequences. I will not spend a single cent of my future to shield you from the financial monster you spent decades creating. Benz, I firmly pointed toward the front door and ordered them to leave my property immediately, closing the door on their toxic manipulation for good. Faced with my unyielding refusal to fund their enabling habits, my parents had to face reality. They downsized into a tiny apartment, and Evelyn was finally forced to get a real job to pay off her own debts. Looking back, drawing that line wasn't about revenge. It was about self-preservation. Sometimes, the greatest success story you can write is choosing to protect your own peace. And refusing to let the people who gave you life completely destroy it.